Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, officers. My appreciation for us tuning in today. Presently, we have 15 participants, and we expect more to join as the event goes on. So the agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We are here to listen to Dr. Preye, and she's going to do justice to a topic that has to do with effectiveness and performance of maritime regulations, looking at SOLAS VGM regulations in particular. So the plan for today is to start with a brief introduction of our guest speaker, which will be handled by Dr. Morris. And then we give the floor to the speaker. And thereafter, we're going to take a Q&A session, and then a very brief comments from the NEC, and then that will be us done with the vote of thanks. So it's going to be it promises to be a very wonderful day and a very good, impactful 1 hour. Thank you very much for joining, and I wish us a very good deliberation today. Of course, I'm going to be your moderator for today. Please don't be bored with me. Welcome to Amano Teaching Support. So please now, Dr. Morris, you have the floor for introduction of our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Monday, for that brief intro. And so we can see that we have our speaker here on board, and I've already given access for her to be able to share screen on when she's called upon. So at this stage, I'm going to just introduce the speaker. As we all know, today's speaker is Dr. Preye, or Jennifer Ugedi. I'm so pleased to have her today. She's one of my mentees for PhD, and I'm always happy to see that she has actually finished her PhD, and also willing to share the knowledge that she's been acquiring for the past years with us. So Dr. Kelly is a self-motivated individual with a passion to thrive at every given opportunity. She possesses a wide range of transferable skills, grit, and commitment to succeed in both personal and professional life. Maintains a flexible approach to a life with a gentle and positive attitude combined with exceptional work ethics. She is currently seeking for industrial experience where she can share and expand her knowledge, add value, and contribute to this to growth. Preye holds 2 diplomas alongside other certificates and qualifications in nautical science from Ahmed University, India, and South Tyneside Marine College, Tyneside, United Kingdom. She also holds a degree in nautical science from Liverpool John Moores University in the UK, after which she did a PhD in maritime transport logistics. Preye started teaching in her teen at Great Grace Montessori School in Delta State, Nigeria, just after completing her secondary school education in 2010. She received a scholarship from the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, to study in India, after which she was transferred to the United Kingdom to complete her degree. After her first degree, she was awarded the Dean Scholarship by the Faculty of Engineering and Technology to do an MPhil / PhD program. She has presented and attended different seminars and conferences where she presented her work. She has just concluded her PhD program and actively seeking industrial and academic employment. Dr. Preye is a Christian who is passionate about working with charitable ventures, readings, music, traveling, mentoring, and coaching young people. She's currently volunteering at the Food Bank Organization, where she meets the needs of impoverished locals. She's also mentors young girls in a local youth group in Liverpool, Merseyside, United Kingdom, and acts as an international students ambassador at the Liverpool John Moss University. So welcome, Dr. Preye Ugedi. We are pleased to have you here. The floor is yours. You can start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. I will share my screen now. I don't know if you all can see the screen. Okay, the host rightly said, we'll be talking about the effectiveness and performance of maritime regulations, SOLAS Verified Gross Mass Regulation. This was part of my research work, although I focus mainly on the SOLAS Verified Gross Mass Regulation. But for anyone to benefit from it, I felt I should at least touch on the maritime regulations in general a bit, just for us to have like a foundational understanding about maritime regulations. I believe like every one of us would know more, one or two about the maritime regulation because we're all maritime personnel, but I will just touch a bit more on it. Okay, so the learning outcome is to explain how maritime regulations are formed, discuss the significance of maritime regulations, and give a brief summary on the SOLAS Verified Gross Mass Regulation, which is a VGM regulation, implementation performance, and also present research techniques that are used on my research that can be applied to measure the effectiveness and performance of maritime regulations. So I just wanted us to start with some trivia questions, trivia quiz. I don't want this session to be just me talking. I want to be free as well. I don't want us to contribute as well. So I know we all know what IMO stands for, but I'm still going to ask anyway, just for the fun of it. So can anyone tell me what IMO stands for? And give us like 1 or 2 sentences you know about the IMO. What do they do? What is it about? And what does the abbreviation stand for? Anyone? If I don't have a response, I will just pick names so we can all. I will ask Mr. Joel Baggy. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, but what does the IMO stand for, sir?
Okay, good morning. IMO stands for International Maritime Organization.
International Maritime Organization. Thank you. Anyone else? Can anyone give us like 1 or 2 sentences on the role of the IMO? Like anything you know that, okay, this is what the IMO does. Or you can go on site if you want to continue. Or anyone else can also.
Okay, I just want to add that IMO sets regulations and standards for maritime activities the world over, as far as safety is concerned and regulations. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Can I have Ugedi sir? Do you want to contribute? What does the IMO do? You can unmute and I want us to contribute, please.
Okay, IMO is the recognized body that helps to regulate the activities of the entire maritime sector.
All right, thank you for that. So we all said it, yeah, the IMO is the International Maritime Organization, and you know, like in the maritime industry, it has always been recognized like that the best way of improving safety in this industry is to have like developing like is to have like international regulations that can be followed by all shipping nations. And from the mid-19th century, a number of conventions and treaties were adopted. Several countries proposed that a permanent international body should be established to promote maritime safety more effectively. But it was not after the establishment of the United Nations itself that it became a reality. So following an international conference in Geneva, I think in the year 1948, a convention was adopted which formally established the IMO. And the original name was the IMCO, Intergovernmental Maritime Consultative Organization, but it was changed to IMO in 1958. So the IMO, like we all know, is the United Nations specialized agency with the responsibility for the safety and security of shipping and the prevention of marine and atmospheric pollution by ships. So the IMO works with the UN SDGs that we all know about. So the main role of the IMO is to promote safety, is to create a regulatory framework for the shipping industry that is fair and effective and can be universally applied. Also, the IMO consists of an assembly, a council, and 5 committees, like the Maritime Safety Committee, the Marine Environment Protection Committee, and so on. So moving on, I know we've heard about IMO conventions, IMO treaties. Do we have an idea what these things mean? Like, what are conventions and what are treaties? Can anyone share? What are conventions and treaties? Are they the same thing? Is there any difference? Anyone, please. I will call on, since there's no one speaking, I believe I pronounced that. Please, can you tell us, either of the two, if you know what conventions are, if you know what a treaty is, you can just. Hello, because of our time, I'll move on. Mary Asukwo, can you please share what convention is or a treaty? Are they the same thing or is there any difference?
Yeah, there is a hand by already have hands up.
Yeah, the person can go on. Sorry, I didn't see that. You can go on, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, treaties, agreement signed between a couple of parties that are agreeing to do a couple of things themselves. But conventions are those done by parties that concerns betterment of anything for the world. So treaties are a bit of a local, that is between you and me, but conventions, you and I can sign for the world.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, just to add to that, so in essence, what the person is saying, treaty can be between maybe 2 states, 1 or 2 states, or just between 3 states. So there's bilateral treaties, there's tri-treaties. Then also the convention, the difference between the treaties and the conventions, like you rightly said, convention can be between like so many member states, could be more between over 50 member states coming together and saying that, okay, we agree on this regulation, this should be looked at, this should be improved on, or this thing needs to be corrected. Okay, let's start doing this. So that's the difference. So it could be, treaty is just between 2 or 3 states or 2 or 3 countries. Then, but the convention involves a whole, like more number of people, or more number of states coming into an agreement. So to the next question, who decides if a new IMO convention is required? So before any maritime regulation comes into place, who are the people that decides it, or what decides it really? Anyone, please. Sorry, I think I just gave you guys the explanation.
So I think it's a special working committee that we set up that we be able to, when they finish, then that treaty can be signed. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Can you please repeat? I didn't get that. So.
It's a specialized committee set up to discuss that issue. It is when they now finish that it can be workable.
Okay, so I just want to assume that you mean maybe a council or the assembly can decide. But before they decide that, okay, this needs to be a convention, it could be as a result of different things. One, it could be as a result of maybe there's a maritime accident that just happened, like a major accident, or this accident kept on like repeating itself over and over again. So people can, the committee or the council can come together and say, okay, this needs to be solved, this needs to be dealt with. So it could be as a result of maritime incidents. Another thing, it could be as a result of maybe a major research. So there's a major, like the ballast water convention. It was as a result of a major research in the industry. And it could be as a result of, like you said, somebody just saying that, okay, this is the problem we are facing in this country in terms of the maritime sector. Maybe we need to deal with this problem. So it could be as a result of a suggestion as well. So what happens after maybe this convention has been adopted or there's an amendment to a convention? What happens? Can anyone state that? What happens? Thank you, Shinji. What happens after adopting or amendment to a convention? Anyone, please.
What happened is that member states are required to comply with the convention. For instance, like the VGM, which we are going to learn about today, after it was signed and adopted, all member countries adopted it and was applied. So we find that cargoes that are required to comply with VGM regulations, so definitely have to apply. We apply to it. So, in a nutshell, once a convention is adopted, then member states will have to comply with it.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, just to add to that, like from what he said, you can see that it takes time before, maybe even after the convention has been adopted or amended, it could take time before it comes into force. It takes time before it is even implemented by maybe IMO member states. So bringing a new convention into force is not actually easy. For example, the Ballast Water Convention, even after it was proposed, it took 13 years for it to come into force. So a lot of things need to be considered. Like people need to understand this regulation. How can they implement it? Is it going to be a burden at the end of the day? So a lot of planning needs to take place. They need to be drafts. There need to be an adoption. So different steps. We're going to talk about that later. So I just want us to look at this. So we have SOLAS, we have MAPO, ISM code, ISPS code. These are things that we are familiar with, I believe. But what led to this convention, like the SOLAS convention? What do you think led to this convention? Anyone, you can pick anyone, the SOLAS, MAPO, ISM code, which one? Anyone you have an idea about?
Okay, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the ISPS code was as a result of the terrorist attack in the US. So they needed to come up with the code to avoid that happening through the maritime sector. That's just like a brief summary of it.
Yes, yes, it was after the threat, like it was after the 9/11 attack. So they thought that, okay, there's actually a threat to the maritime industry. So we need to consider this. Okay, what about others? The other ones, SOLAS, MAPO, anyone?
Morris here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I think the SOLAS, if I'm just guessing, I think it was after the Titanic sinking when they did a research and discovered that there were limited safety equipment on board. That was what actually led to the deaths of many people. So I think that was when the SOLAS regulation was looked into. The MAPO, I'm not really sure of the particular vessel, but I know it was an oil incident that happened. I don't know if it was in the coast of France or somewhere. I'm trying to remember that led to the death of many aquatic organisms. So I think that's all I can say for now.
Yeah, the SOLAS was as a result of Titanic. MAPO was as a result of an oil tanker going on ground. I think it's called the Turkish. Because of time, the ISM code. Sorry?
Vessel.
Go on, sir.
The Vando's the tanker.
Yes, yes. The ISM code was as a result of the sinking of the Era of Free Enterprise, which was as a result of human safety and human error. The Ballast Water Convention was due to like major research as well that found out that aquatic lives could be endangered by the ship ballast water systems if it's not properly treated, if it's not properly maintained. And the loan line regulation was also as a result of major research as well that was meant to promote the ship stability. So just to ensure that okay, ships are rightly loaded and not loaded to the extent that it results to the ship being imbalanced. So these are just few reminders of, most of us might have even forgotten all these things, but just to remind us of all these little things. So going into our IMO conventions are like they go from the process of maybe someone coming up with an idea or someone coming up with this convention and it going into force. Coming into force, there are four different procedures. So the first one is the drafting of the convention. So it could be that, okay, like we mentioned earlier on that, okay, before a particular convention comes into force, it could be as a result of major marine incident or maybe a research finding. So after someone proposed the idea, it needs to be drafted by the council or the committee. So they draft the convention in a way that suits each member state. So any member state can propose the need for a new convention, and if it is satisfied with the merits of the proposal, the committee will forward the proposal to the council or assembly as required. And if a council or assembly accept the proposal, it will then authorize the committee to proceed with the work. So when the committee will then work on this proposal in detail and will draw a draft convention. So after drafting the convention, this draft convention is then sent to the council, and the assembly. At this point, the committee would also recommend the council and the assembly for a conference. So after calling the conference, then through that, the convention will then be adopted. So even after adopting the convention, it needs to be ratified by like major member states, like a number of member states before it's well accepted. So by ratification, we mean acceptance basically. So they need to look into detail, like, is it going to be a burden? Is it going to work? Like in terms of, because we know that like the IMO is made up of like over 170 member states. So is it going to be well implemented? Do they have the right things in place to implement this convention? So there are a lot of things to consider. So after the acceptance, when they have like major acceptance of this regulation, then it can enter into force and being implemented by like all the member states involved. So like there are three ways this ratification can take place. So it could be by signature, just them giving their signature, by ratification, like just showing acceptance that, okay, we are willing to go ahead with this plan. And by accession, I won't go into detail of this legal aspect, but just for our knowledge. So in terms of how an IMO convention can be amended, it's always by two ways, by resolution and by protocol. So by resolution is also by, it could be by the amendment by consideration within IMO or amendment by conference. So with that said and done, going into the SOLAS verified gross mass regulation, which was a major part of my research, the initial idea was to propose an idea that would maybe solve the issue of misdeclared container weights. Because before this regulation came into place, there were like different accidents that resulted from misdeclared containers. But when the regulation came into place, so we changed our plans from actually providing a solution to looking into detail, like looking into the regulation, or just to ascertain if the regulation meets its aim at the end of the day. So the aim was to assess the performance and effectiveness of the container weighing verification requirements, just to measure the effectiveness and performance of the regulation. So in order to do this, like these were our objectives. For us to be able to measure the performance of the regulation, it meant we need to look at the regulation in detail. So we looked at the problem of misdeclaration and we investigated all the issues that were related to the regulation. We also designed a model that can be able to test the performance of the maritime stakeholders involved. And we did a case study on the matter using this model as well. So like I mentioned earlier, that it takes time, even after proposing a convention, it takes time for it to come into force. Like this SOLAS VGM regulation, it was as a result of a major incident, the MSC Napoli in 2007. Then from 2011, IMO began to develop measures that will solve this problem, but it actually came into force, the regulation itself came into force in 2016. But even after that, even after proposing this regulation, there was also an accident just last year as a result of misdeclared container weights, which actually showed the importance of our research work. So the solution was the regulation. The solution to solve the problem of misdeclared container weight was the regulation. And regulation proposed that the shipper needs to weigh every single container, every packed container before loading on board the ship. And you can choose to use either method 1 or method 2. So the shipper was solely responsible as stated by the regulation. These were some key important literatures. You might want to take note of them, but I won't bore you with them. So for us to be able to solve this problem, we had to like think deep on the regulation, ask some scrutinizing questions, why the amendment of the regulation, who are those involved, what are the changes, what is the impact of this change, how is regulation implemented by different countries, by different stakeholders, and also even looking at the systems in place, because it means for each container to be weighed, it means that the right systems need to be in place. The right system that are in line with IMO standard needs to be in place. So we looked at this aspect as well, and we developed a model and we applied it to master like I mentioned. In terms of the research justification, not much work has been done on this area, but I'll just leave that because of our time. So for the methodologies, we made use of AHP. Most of you might be familiar with it, and we made use of TOPSIS. These are decision-making tools as well. And for the model, we use balance scorecards. The balance scorecard is a well-known performance measuring tool, and we combine that with Fuzzy HP. And we also used some economic tools as well, some financial tools like the cost-benefit analysis, decision trees, and Monte Carlo simulation. So like I mentioned, the first technical chapter we did, for the first technical chapter we did, we tried to solve the issue of the container weighing systems in ports. So this regulation stated that every single container needs to be weighed before loading aboard the ship. So what are the systems that are in place in this port that what are the systems the ports are using? Are they in line with the IMO standard? And how can we tell, okay, this is the most suitable container weighing system? So for us to like enhance this, or for us to support the port basically, or to help the port decide on which system is more efficient, we then looked at all the systems in place. There were I think there were 8 container weighing systems, and we did an analysis. And at the end of the day, we were able to choose one, the mobile arbor crane, as the most suitable container weighing system that would meet the requirements of the SOLAS VGM regulation. And we looked at different criteria as well. The port needs to consider, like cost, accuracy, technical properties, reliability, and safety. These are things that the port needs to consider when investing in such container weighing systems. Then for the implementation performance, which was the main part of the research, we looked at, for the SOLAS VGM regulation, who are the people that are most likely affected by this regulation at the end of the day, besides the shipper. So we discovered the port terminal operator as well, the freight forwarder, the carrier, and national authorities like the MCA, the MASA are also likely to be affected by this regulation. So we then designed balance scorecard. The way the balance scorecard works is for it to measure the performance of any organization, or maybe a company, or for this instance, a regulation. It looks at it from 4 perspectives. So it looks at the financial perspective, the labor perspective, internal business perspective, and learning and growth perspective. This scorecard, this balance scorecard, can be used to test the performance of, should I say, maybe a company that we want to, Microsoft, for instance. If they want to measure their employee performance, they can use this the scorecard, and looking at maybe the financial perspective, labor perspective, all this perspective. So we designed the balance scorecard, and we were able to design it for each of the stakeholders. So the shipper, port operator, we had balance scorecard for each of them that they can use to measure their performance of the regulation. So even after designing the scorecard, so we decided to do like a case study, and we applied it on the MASA. So we sent out questionnaires. We had to send out questionnaires to some experts, some personnel in the MASA, and we got some responses. From the responses, we were able to conduct the analysis. You can see the maritime labor service, maritime safety management, maritime environment management. These are departments, in some departments in the MASA, and we were able to come up with a total rate of performance. In terms of this regulation, it was 6.418, which is really not too bad from the range of 1 to 10, which is really not too bad. So, but it meant that there were some areas of improvement, because from our findings, it turned out that most of the officials, they were not really aware of this regulation. They don't really know how it works. So yeah, so which like summarizes the fact that even after proposing a convention, there needs to be awareness. There needs to be people needs to be aware of, okay, this is a regulation and this is the way to go about it. And the right system needs to be in place, like the post-state control. They need to ensure that, okay, this regulation is well complied with. Like from time after time, they need to do all these checks and all that. So a lot of things, it shows that a lot of things needs to be in place. So after that, we did some economic appraisal. We did some economic appraisal on the regulation as well. So we looked at all the decisions that the shipper needs to make, since the shipper is solely responsible, as stated by the regulation. We looked at all the decisions the shipper needs to make. What method, like for instance, there are 2 methods, method 1 or method 2. Like, how can it decide, okay, this is the method I want to use? Or how can it decide if, okay, I'm going to go to the port to weigh the container, or I'm going to provide the weight of the container myself? So we looked at all these decisions, using decision trees to prefer a solution to the shipper, okay, that this is the best decision to make. And we also using decision trees as well, and we're able to prefer a solution for that. And also we looked at the port as well. So how does the port decide going back to the first technical chapter we did about the selection of container weighing system. So even after selecting this system, is it a good investment for the port to do at the end of the day, like investing on container weighing system? Is it a good investment, or is it just to meet with the regulation requirements? So we did an analysis on this just to test if it's a good project. And at the end of the day, it shows that it's a good project, even though it meets with the requirements of the regulation. But it's actually a good project because the benefits outweighs the cost at the end of the day. Although most of the values we used for this particular analysis were more fictitious data because we're not able to get some actual data, but which shows that, okay, this part of the work needs to be expanded, and it's something that we'll consider to do in the future as well. So because of those fictitious data, we were able to run a sensitivity analysis using Monte Carlo simulation. Most of us might not be familiar with this, most of these techniques, but I won't bore you with that. So we did Monte Carlo simulation just to solve the issues of fictitious data. So that was it. From the research finding, after all this analysis, we were able to meet our objectives. We were able to select the best weighing equipment for the ports, and we were able to design balanced scorecards for the 5 key industry stakeholders. And this model that we did is not just applicable to the SOLAS VGM regulation, it can be applied to other maritime regulations as well. So in fact, so if a convention should come out next year, they can actually, stakeholders like maybe the shipper or a freight forwarder can actually measure their performance using this model that we've created as well. And also NIMASA as well can from time to time use this model as well. And other maritime organizations or shipping companies can actually apply this model to test their performance. It could be their employee performance or their yearly performance as well. So yeah, in terms of novelty, we looked at for the first time, we looked at the SOLAS VGM regulation more in depth, and we're able to provide solutions to different areas like selection of weighing systems and also the economic appraisal, which we did, and also designing research frameworks for NIMASA and other maritime stakeholders. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for your attention. And if there's any question, I'm open to answer.
Yes, Dr. Preye, thank you very much for wonderful insight on your research work, and really very, very educative, and the concentration level, I tell you, is so high that everywhere just silent and listening to you attentively. I want to say thank you for your time, and thanks for this wonderful presentation. So now we're going to proceed to question and answer session. If you have any question, if you have any comments, please indicate by raising your hand or dropping a message on the chat box, and then we can identify you and allow you to comment. Yes, straight away, we're going to go to Connie. Connie, your hands are up. Please, you have the floor for your question or comments. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So mine is more of a comment, really, and thank you, Doctor, for the wonderful presentation. I think this presentation is quite timely and apt. Reason being that of late, you find that a lot of the regulations that are coming straight out of IMO require some sort of analysis, research, and studies for implementation. It's no longer a one-way implementation like it used to be. So now, say for example, IMO 2020, you had 3 options, and you were either going to choose one of the 3 options to comply. So you'll be looking at what your fleet is, your NPV for each of the options, and all of that. So I think going forward in the industry, we're going to be seeing more and more of research work and analysis and all of that. So just food for thought for all of us. Really, it's an area we need to start also to build skills in. Thank you.
Thank you for that one.
Yeah. So next is Kisley Osifo. Kisley Osifo, you have the floor. After you, Bagai will come.
Thank you very much, Dr. Preye, for the timely awareness and your work of education that is putting us in line with the latest convention and the possible techniques of its effectiveness. My question is still based on your background explanation on the IMO and its member states. I needed clarity on what you mean by member states and what is the relationship between the IMO and these member states. The second question is, okay, I think I will come to the second question later, if this is answered, because you will need to show me the slide of your BSc analysis for me to ask the question, please.
By member states, I mean like different countries. So like the UK is part of the member states, Nigeria as well. US, so like different countries are the member states.
Okay, their relationship with IMO with respect to regulation. Yeah, as you.
So is this countries that makes up the organization itself? So they make up the committee, they make up the assemblies. So like the assembly is like the highest level of the IMO. The council, I mean, comes after. So, but these countries have what makes up the organization.
Okay. The second question is, thank you for that, understood that. The second question is on the fact that you mentioned, based on the regulation, this SOLAS VGM regulation, and you mentioned method 1, either method 1 or method 2 will be used. And it was not quite clear what the different methods are. So what exactly are the methods preferred by the convention?
Okay, so I mentioned that there are method 1, there's method 1 and there's method 2. So method 1 is like the shipper providing the weight of a whole container. So the container has already been loaded and everything. So that's just method 1. So providing the weight of a loaded container or a packed container. Then method 2 is like, should I say, a broken process. So it's more applicable to, for instance, maybe the container contains like, should I say, grains or barrels of things that cannot be weighed like, should I say, on their own. So it contains maybe like bags of rice, or I don't know. I'm just trying to describe. So like it's a broken down process. So it's the weight of the empty container plus the weight of the cargo plus the weight of the securing materials. So all together. So it's applicable to a particular type of cargo, but not all types of cargo.
Sorry, my questions are coming like in a sequence. It's because I find the subject quite interesting. I need to know more. That's why I'm asking, and it's a job you have done, right? So having explained these two different methods, from your work, it's now based on the clauses of the regulation, it appears to be like two options to follow. Does your work assess which one of them is in the hand based on cost, accuracy, and time management for shipping duration and the rest? Does it profile in any way any one of them that is the best for shipper or any other stakeholder to easily go by?
I'm trying to get you. Do you mean in terms of the criteria for selecting the content?
Yes, like since it is a clause or an option based on the cargo a shipper or any stakeholder would use, is there any advantage of anyone over the other from your work?
In going back to the analysis, the major criteria for them to consider was I think safety. So safety,
okay,
I can't say that each of the criteria are not important. They are important. Cost is also important. Accuracy is also important, which is what the regulation is all about. So like the weight needs to be accurate at the end of the day. Safety is very much important. Reliability is all important. The technical properties of these weighing systems are all important. But from the analysis, it was found out that I think safety has the highest rates.
Okay. Okay. The last question. Please, can you show us your slides on your BSc results chapter? On the table, there is something I needed to get clarified on that. As you mentioned that the BSc was majorly assessing the performance of the regulation.
What slide, sir?
The results chapter, where you showed the overall performance, total performance rate, I think, yeah, in a table with different figures. Yes. No, BSc, please. Chapter 3, if I'm not making a mistake.
Yes.
That's it. First it again.
Yes. Sir.
Okay, I can be asking the question, right? From that table of your result and from your explanation of the BSc, it looks into the performance of different aspects of the regulation using this NEMASA as a case study for your national, as a national authority, right? And you mentioned financial perspectives, something, yeah, financial perspective, labor and growth, and in different departments. So I really need to know what all these perspectives are measuring. I don't know if you get, with respect to implementing the regulation, like those 4 different perspectives you mentioned, what it actually means to measuring the performance of the regulation by NEMASA, right? And what those results actually mean with respect to that.
Okay, the financial perspective looks at the aspects of cost. So is there, like, this convention or this regulation is now in place? So is there any, just like the name, is there any cost? Is it going to result to any financial issue at the end of the day? So what are the costs involved? And how does this affect those that are implementing the regulation? How does it affect the shipper? How does it affect the port in terms of the financial aspect? So it looks at the financial aspect of the regulation. The labor looks at, okay, and what are the things that needs to, or what is required by the shipper, or what is required from the port terminal operator, what is required from the freight forwarder, what is required from the carrier. So it looks at the work aspect of it, or their role, each of their role in this. Then the internal business perspective, like the name goes, it looks at the fact that, okay, for this regulation to be in place, do they need to be any, should I say, tool or any equipment or anything that needs to be put in place for them to carry out this regulation? But in the case of this, it means that the port needs to have the right weighing systems in place for them to meet the requirements of the regulation. So that's also an internal business perspective as well. For the learning and growth, so now this regulation is in place. Do they need to acquire any skill? Do there have to be any training in place for them to meet the requirements of this regulation? So it looks at that as well. So that's just the simplest way I can explain it to the perspective.
Yeah, I think you very well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Kingsley, just to throw more light on the on what Dr. Preye has mentioned is that your internal business perspective. So in terms of, for example, you look at the Nigeria, so you look at the internal that internal business actually involve the government, because if their government is involved in the business of the sport of this activities administration. So what are the things that the issues that the regulatory body like NIMASA will be facing, a local business that are affecting the implementation of that regulation. So all those things are encompassed into that internal business. Internal business could be the government influence, the stakeholders influence within that country, how the business are being done, are they straightforward, or they, those kind of challenges that the regulatory body might be having as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Morris, for the explanation. So just Bagai, you have the floor now. Then after Bagai, Captain Oredi, and then Captain Jerry Preye.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Preye, for your presentation. I have two questions to ask, very straightforward. The first question is, under this VGM regulation, what is the maximum gross weight for a 20-foot and a 40-foot container respectively? What is the maximum weight of a 20-foot and a 40-foot respectively under the VGM regime? And then the second question is, probably I didn't get what you said. Who are the major key stakeholders that you considered in your research that you mentioned? Most probably I couldn't get that in the presentation. I want to know the major stakeholders that you considered during your research. Thank you.
Okay. The regulation itself did not really specify that, okay, this is going to be the weight of a 20-foot or a 40-foot container, but it gave some allowance in terms of when it comes to loading. So there's plus or minus 5%. So it must not exceed 5%, even if the shipper goes beyond like the actual weights that the particular container needs to. The particular weight the container is allowed to carry, but it must not exceed 5%. So that's what the regulation specified. And also in terms of the maritime stakeholders you talked about, so we looked into the shipper, the port terminal operators. These are the key stakeholders, the freight forwarders, the national authorities. Sorry, let me go back to the slide. So it's the shipper, port terminal operators, freight forwarders, the carriers, or the shipping companies, the national authorities. National authorities like the likes of NIMASA and those.
Yeah, that's thank you, Dr. Preye. Please, Captain Oredi, you have the floor now for a question or comments.
Sorry, I'm not satisfied with the
okay. Somebody's still talking.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not satisfied with the first response regarding the maximum gross weight for either 20-foot, because if it is not specified the maximum gross weight that a container should carry, then perhaps the ends of this convention might be defeated in our opinion. So I think that, okay, you can load X and Y weight, but it must not exceed a certain limit. That's what I'm trying to understand. And if that is not specified, then maybe it may actually defeat the purpose of the regime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going back to that, so like you just mentioned that the allowance is 5%, so it must not exceed 5%. I don't know if that meeting more understand. It must not exceed 5%. So regardless of the weight of the.
Sorry, can I quickly chip in something just for clarity? Because I I was privileged to take a part of this research when it was going on. So I think I get what Mr. Joel is, the question is asking, and also get what Dr. Preye is saying. I think what Mr. Joy is saying is is there like a specific weight limit that it shouldn't exceed? And what Dr. Preye is saying there is they give 5% room. So in other words, you can go beyond certain weight, but actually we have different type of containers. So when you're bringing the containers to the port, the container itself, you will tell the shipper, the shipper will tell the port, this is how much this container weighs. So that when they're stacking containers on board vessels, they have to put the heavier ones have to be at the bottom, the way they will stack it properly. So you tell them the weight so they will know how to stack the container. So what Dr. Preye is saying is, if you tell them any weight that this is the weight that is, I think you're using method 2 now, that you're weighing it yourself. If you tell them that you're weighing it yourself and you declare that this is the weighting, if they assess it and check it themselves, the room they're expecting should be 5% plus or minus 5%. It shouldn't exceed that amount. If not, you'll be fined, and there will be penalty for you to face. I don't know if that helped.
Yes, it does help. Sorry, I'm not trying to talk, but I've seen a situation whereby the container gets to terminal and they were turned back because they exceeded a certain limit, and so they were asked to go back, perhaps to the shipper's warehouse, and then reduce whatever cargo that's inside before they can actually be accepted by the terminal for loading on board the vessel. That's okay. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Bogai. Please, Captain, already you have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much. And for the purpose of clarity, I think those that are not speaking can just mute their mics because I think it interferes. So if they mute their mics, we'll be able to hear each other better. But that's one. Now, mine is more of a suggestion, and probably that could get the IMO thinking. When it comes to ships, probably because they don't kill high-profile people, things are very, very slow, very slow. Now, if it is aviation, next day we make a decision. But with ships, we just take our time because it kills only crew. Now, the problems we are trying to solve here are not difficult. I think modern-day seafarers are also moving away from the traditional way of ascertaining some of these things. I remember I almost lost my job in Jakarta once, because what I normally do, I never trust those guys when it comes to containers, Jakarta and Bangkok. A very bad experience. Now, I told them at one point that, look, I can't take any more containers. They reported me to the captain, and the captain took over the loading. But they didn't know that at the time before the loading, I'd already gone and taken my conditions. So as the cargo was coming in, I was monitoring, and I knew that we were going to be in trouble. But however, he took over the loading, and what saved my job on that day later was that the moment the tugs pulled us out of the quay, we went into an angle of lull and almost capsized. That was what saved my job. Now, within the minds of a human being, you can use a stopwatch to check this. You can use your deadweight scale to check what's going on. You can use all of that. Why at this modern day and age, we cannot design computer systems on a ship that is going to suddenly scream on the crew that something is not right? It is very easy to design. Very, very easy to design. As I said, you're putting the containers across the ship, athwart ship. From the roll period, you could tell that your ship is becoming tender or something is not right. So the computer registers what is going on as you progress. And at some point, if somebody gives you a wrong weight, the computer should be able to tell you that what you are imputing into the ship and what the ship is calculating is not correct. I think we should look at this for the future. That's my suggestion.
Thank you, Moshe. Thank you so much for that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So, Captain Jerry Preye, you have the floor now, sir.
Yeah, good morning, all. Mine is of implementation between let me still use the word first world and the third world, and I'm using Nigeria as an example, since this research was based also on Nigeria. Now, NPA is almighty federal government organization. She controls almost all the ports. So how does NIMASA able to implement this convention in the territory where NPA is the almighty landlord? Is there not going to be a conflict? And can this convention be implemented in Nigeria if we give the sole authority to the NIMASA? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the question. I won't say that the sole authority belongs to NIMASA. I think MP and NIMASA works together one way or the other, and like I don't think either of them can do without the other, basically. And in terms of if the regulation is being implemented in Nigeria, so that was the essence of like doing this analysis and doing the case study with NIMASA. And it turned out that, okay, most of them were not actually aware of this regulation, like the awareness is not there. You don't really know what the regulation is about or how is it going to be implemented. So it can also tell that, I won't say that maybe the right things are not in place or the right systems are not in place. So I think that will go back to whosoever makes decisions on their behalf, like they need to be awareness, the right things need to be in place, this regulation needs to, and also NIMASA is the regulatory body. So I think they have much right in terms of how this regulation needs to be implemented. They have much right since they are the regulatory body, and they are the body that, should I say, the IMO communicates with, so that the NIMASA is the IMO member states, basically. So if, going back to your question, NPA has much authority, they have ground in Nigeria as well, but since NIMASA is the regulatory body, they need to be in constant communication. They need to be the one like enforcing this regulation at the end of the day. They need to be the one that ensures that, okay, this regulation is well implemented. We have everything in place to meet the requirements of this regulation.
Yeah. So, Doctor, we have some questions on the chat. Samuel MBA is asking, to what extent does SOLAS affect the autonomous ship regulation?
At what extent?
Hello, sir. I want to make a contribution to the response given to Patricia's question. Can I go ahead?
Yes, yes, sure.
Go ahead. You can go ahead, Bugai.
Yeah. The contribution I want to make is that let me just start before the implementation of the this VGM convention. NIMASA actually went around to shipping companies to, as far as I can remember, to enlighten stakeholders about the forthcoming regime. So, but just like the presenter has said, NPA through the terminal operators are the key stakeholders that ensure that this regulation is fully complied with. Just like I gave an example during my last comment, when a container, full-laden container gets the terminal, before it is accepted, it is at the way bridge by the terminal operator, or even though their cargo handling equipment are attached with weighing facilities. So any container that is way above the allowed weight, then they have the right to turn it back. So the comment I'm trying to make is that the major regulator here, yes, NIMASA is involved, but NPA through the terminal operators. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Bagai. So please, Dr. Preye, the last comment here is the question I asked by from the chat. Samuel MBA is asking if what extent does SOLAS affect autonomous ship regulations?
Well, you know, SOLAS is mainly on safety, and in terms of automated shippings or all these technologies that have been brought in place to enhance shipping per se. I think since SOLAS is focusing mainly on safety, it also, I'm just trying to explain because I don't really know much about this aspect, but I'm trying to explain based on my own understanding. Since SOLAS is focusing majorly on safety per se, and there are different technologies that are being brought in place. So SOLAS would act as, should I say, SOLAS would work in, I don't know how to put, but if anyone has an idea about this, they can also comment as well. SOLAS will ensure at the end of the day that these technologies that are being brought in place are actually complying with safety, and they are complying with safety and security, basically.
Okay.
Right.
Can I chip in on that?
All right.
Yeah, sure.
Captain Sunday Omoren will give you the floor, and we enjoy the benefit of being to tap from your wisdom, and then we try to round up this program. It's been 1 hour, 6 minutes. Please, Captain Omoren, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Very good morning to all. Sorry, I missed the topic because I was doing my lecture somewhere else. I happen to have been a member of the mass subcommittee in IMO. As a good lady pointed, it's all about maritime safety. So SOLAS is will be fully responsible for the the autonomous surface vessels. And in fact, as we know, there's a committee, a maritime safety committee, that actually, I don't want to use the word, but let me use the word, that's principally responsible for all SOLAS related issues. So everything on Mars, autonomous vessel is under maritime safety committee. Presently, they are still working on the scoping. They've moved from the scoping and the regulation bit. So for now, there's absolutely nothing on it in SOLAS, but they're building up into coming up with the regulation that will guide, that will eventually guide the mass operation. First is going to be like, what is the qualification of the operator? Do you really need to be a seafarer to fully understand it? Will there be a captain, even though those ships are being operated from the offices? Will there be a captain? How would the ranks be? So SOLAS is actually working, the Maritime Safety Committees is actually working on every aspect, the scoping, the regulation, the application. After which if an agreement is reached, it will now move to SOLAS. But what I'm trying to say next is that eventually this will come in under SOLAS. So probably let's look forward to a new chapter of SOLAS that will be on autonomous vessels. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Captain Moren, for that roundup. I think it's been a very robust full day, and the discussion is still coming. But we can't continue because if not, we're going to continue till PM, till evening. So I think we've almost exhausted our time. So we proceed to the next agenda, which is any comments from NEC? Any comment from NEC? In absence of NEC, I will give the room to Connie Dunia. If you're around, can you give us a word of thanks? No. So, Dr. Morris.
Connie is talking. Connie is there.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So, Connie, please, you have the floor for vote of thanks. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, very educating session, very apt, given the times we're in right now. Dr. Preye, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. We look forward to more. We're like Oliver Twist. When you give us, we always want more. And we're wanting more because this session has indeed been impactful. And I like how interactive it has been too. That shows that it's well packed and put together. So Doctor, thank you very much. And on behalf of Amano, we wish you all the very best in your future endeavors. And you can always reach out to us. We are your friends in the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, for attending. We've come to the end of the program. See you in 2 weeks' time for yet another edition of this workshop. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a wonderful day and remain safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye.